The Great Hall of Station Harmony was silent. Thousands of alien delegates sat in their seats, their many eyes fixed on the massive holographic display floating above the central platform. The display showed a map of the galaxy, and across that map a dark stain was spreading. Colony after colony was turning red, dead, consumed. Ambassador Park stood among the human delegation, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and silver-streaked hair. She had spent 20 years learning alien languages, customs, and politics. She had helped humanity earn its place among the stars. But right now, she felt very small and very afraid. The high speaker floated to the center of the platform. There were tall beings made of living crystal. They glowed with soft blue light when they were calm and sharp red when they were angry. Right now, the high speaker was glowing deep purple. Fear. "The swarm has entered council space," the high speaker announced. Their voice echoed through the hall like wind through a canyon. 3 colonies have fallen in the past cycle. 12 billion lives lost. The swarm does not negotiate. It does not take prisoners. It only feeds. Had read the reports. There were a hive mind species. They looked like massive insects, each one the size of a car. But they shared one mind, one hunger. They moved from world to world, consuming everything organic. Plants, animals, people. They turned entire planets into empty rocks floating in space. The holographic display changed. It showed the swarm's projected path. A bright green dot sat directly in that path. Prime. Population, 8 billion. "We have 60 cycles before the swarm reaches prime," the high speaker continued. "Our military forces are not enough. We need help." The hall erupted into noise. Delegates shouted in 100 different languages. Some called for retreat. Some called for negotiation. Some simply screamed. The delegate and being with 4 arms and compound eyes stood on their seat. "The council has one option," they clicked. "We must ask humanity for military support." More shouting. Humanity was the youngest species in the council. They had only been members for 50 years. Many older species still considered them primitives, dangerous primitives. Humans had fought more wars among themselves than most species had fought in their entire history. They were creative, stubborn, and completely unpredictable. That was exactly why the council needed them now. "Step forward. Earth will answer the call," she said. Her voice was calm and steady. "I will contact our defense committee immediately." The high speaker's glow shifted slightly toward blue. "Hope. We ask for your finest warriors, Ambassador Park, your best strategic minds. The fate of billions depends on it." Nodded. She did not mention that Earth's finest warriors were currently scattered across 3 different sectors, dealing with 3 different crises. She would figure something out. She always did. Back on Earth, General sat in a conference room deep beneath the mountains of Korea. He was a large man with a weathered face and tired eyes. He had fought in 4 wars and commanded forces across 2 star systems. He had never faced anything like this. "We have nothing," he said flatly. "The 7th Fleet is dealing with the Outer Rim pirates. The Marine Corps is providing security for the Andromeda negotiations. Our special forces are scattered across a dozen different postings." The other officers around the table nodded grimly. They had been through the lists a dozen times. Every available unit was committed elsewhere. A young analyst named Han raised her hand. She was fresh out of the academy, barely 25 years old. General almost ignored her, but something in her eyes made him pause. "Speak," he said. Pulled up a file on her tablet. Her hands were shaking slightly. "Sir, there is 1 unit available, the Florida National Guard Special Circumstances Division." The room went completely silent. General stared at her. "The what?" "The Special Circumstances Division, sir. They handle unusual situations, primarily in the Florida region of the former United States." "I know what Florida is," General said slowly. I also know that the Florida National Guard is not a frontline combat unit. They deal with hurricanes and escaped zoo animals. Swallowed hard. Sir, their commander has a very impressive record. He has successfully resolved over 200 unusual situations. He has 0 casualties under his command. He is also completely insane. She pulled up another file. It was a news article with a photograph. The photograph showed a shirtless man with wild eyes and a huge grin, wrestling an alligator that was almost as big as he was. The headline read, "Florida Man SAVES retirement home from gator invasion again." General stared at the photograph for a long time. Then he started laughing. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had run out of options. "Get him on the line," he said. Commander Lee was standing knee-deep in a swimming pool when his phone rang. The swimming pool belonged to the Sunny Palms retirement community. The alligator he was currently wrestling belonged to nobody, which was part of the problem. "Hold on," he grunted into his headset. He grabbed the alligator's jaws with both hands and twisted. The massive reptile thrashed and rolled but held on. He had done this many times before. After a few minutes, the alligator got tired, dragged it out of the pool and handed it off to his team. Then he wiped the sweat from his forehead and answered the call properly. "Commander Lee speaking. What's the situation?" "Commander, this is General from the United Nations Defense Committee. We have a mission for you." Scratched his chin. "What kind of mission?" "Alien bugs are going to eat a planet. We need you to stop them." There was a long pause. Behind, the elderly residents of Sunny Palms watched with confused interest. One of them offered him a glass of lemonade. "Space bugs?" asked. "Yes. Big ones. Very big." His grin slowly spread across his face. It was the kind of grin that made sensible people nervous. It was the kind of grin that meant something exciting was about to happen. "General," he said, taking the lemonade with a grateful nod, "I've been waiting my whole life for this." He hung up the phone and turned to his team. Sergeant was loading the alligator into the transport vehicle. Corporal was feeding treats to the 3 pythons wrapped around his shoulders. Private O was filling out paperwork and trying very hard to look professional. "Pack your bags, team," announced. "We're going to space." Looked up. "Space? Space? What's in space?" His grin grew even wider. "Gators, space gators." The team exchanged glances. They had followed Commander Lee through swamps full of crocodiles, hurricanes that bent trees in half, and one very memorable incident involving a bear, a shopping cart, and 200 pounds of fireworks. Space could not possibly be worse. They were wrong, but they would not find that out until later. The transport ship docked at Station Harmony with a soft hiss of pressure seals. Ambassador Park stood at the airlock with her diplomatic team, her face carefully neutral. She had reviewed Commander Lee's file during the journey from the council chamber. She had also taken 2 headache pills. The airlock opened. Steam rolled out like fog from a swamp. Through the mist walked 4 figures. Commander Lee came first. He was not wearing a shirt. He was wearing cargo shorts, flip-flops, and a baseball cap that said, "I survived the Everglades," in faded letters. He carried a large cooler in one hand and a machete in the other. The machete had "Diplomacy" written on the blade in permanent marker. Behind him came Sergeant. She was a sturdy woman with short hair and arms like tree trunks. She carried a duffel bag that made soft clinking sounds with every step. Decided she did not want to know what was inside. Corporal followed next. He was a thin man with a gentle face and 2 pythons wrapped around his neck like scarves. The pythons appeared to be sleeping. Hoped they were sleeping. Private O came last. She was young, professional, and wearing an actual uniform. She looked deeply embarrassed. Stepped forward. "Commander Lee, I am Ambassador Park. Welcome to Station Harmony. Before we proceed to the council briefing, perhaps you might want to..." Find a shirt, interrupted. Nah, shirts restrict movement, bad for fighting. Commander, the council members come from very different cultures. Some of them might find your appearance intimidating. Good. Want them to know we mean business. Opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She looked at Private O. Private O shrugged helplessly. This was clearly normal. The council chamber was even more crowded than before. Representatives from 30 species filled the seats, all of them watching as the human delegation entered. The room fell silent. Commander Lee walked straight to the center platform, boots squeaking on the polished floor. He set down his cooler, pulled out a beer, and cracked it open. The sound echoed through the entire chamber. "All right," he said loudly. "Someone tell me about these bug things." The high speaker floated forward, their crystal body flickering with confused colors. You are the military expert Earth has sent." "That's right. You do not appear to be wearing armor or clothing." Looked down at himself, then back up at the high speaker. "This is clothing. These are shorts. They're very comfortable, great for hot weather. Do you have hot weather on that planet we're saving?" "Prime has a temperate climate with." "Good enough. Now show me these bugs." The holographic display activated, showing detailed images of the swarm. The creatures were horrifying. Each warrior was the size of a ground vehicle, with thick armored shells, massive claws, and jaws that could bite through steel. They had no eyes, but their heads were covered with antennae that sensed heat and movement. Sergeant leaned in close, studying the images. "They look like big roaches." "Worse than roaches," the delegate clicked. "They are perfect predators. They adapt to any environment. They communicate through pheromones, making them impossible to ambush. They have consumed over 100 civilizations across 10,000 years." Scratched his chin. "Can they swim?" The entire chamber stared at him. "Swim," the high speaker repeated. "Why would that matter?" "Just curious. What about fire? Do they burn good?" "Commander Lee," Ambassador Park interrupted, her voice strained. "Perhaps we should focus on strategic planning rather than asking if the enemy burns well." "Ma'am, with respect, knowing if the enemy burns well is strategic planning. Sergeant, what do you think?" Finished studying the display, she pulled a small notebook from her pocket and started writing. "Exoskeleton looks thick but segmented, probably weak at the joints. Those antennae look important. Take those out, maybe they can't coordinate. Big and heavy, which means slow on turns." "That's my girl," said proudly. "See, strategy." The delegate, a being that looked like a pile of sentient moss, vibrated with concern. "You cannot fight the swarm with simple observations. They number in the billions. They have destroyed fleets 10 times the size of anything we can assemble." Took a long drink of his beer. "Has anyone ever just walked up and punched one?" Dead silence. Walked up to one of these bugs and hit it really hard, in the face, or whatever that is." The silence stretched on. Private O covered her face with her hands. "I believe," the high speaker said slowly, "that no species has attempted such a tactic." "Well, there you go. That's our advantage." Ambassador Park stepped forward quickly. "What Commander Lee means is that humanity often finds success through unconventional approaches. We will study the situation carefully and develop a comprehensive." Every light in the station suddenly turned red. Alarms screamed through the speakers. The holographic display flickered and changed, showing a sensor reading from outside the station. "Scout ship detected," an automated voice announced. "Distance 50,000 kilometers, closing fast." Panic erupted in the chamber. Delegates screamed and ran for exits. Security teams rushed in, not knowing what to do. The high speaker's glow turned blood red with fear. Calmly finished his beer and crushed the can. "Sergeant, what did you bring in that bag?" Grinned. It was not a nice grin. "Homemade explosives, sir, enough to take out a small building." "Outstanding. Corporal, keep those snakes calm. Private O, find me a shuttle. A shuttle, stammered. Sir, we don't have clearance to. Not asking for clearance, asking for a shuttle. 20 minutes later, Commander Lee was aboard a maintenance shuttle, speeding toward the scout ship. The shuttle was held together with duct tape and hope. Sergeant's explosives were strapped to the front. Private O was flying, her knuckles white on the controls. "This is insane," said through gritted teeth. "This is completely insane." "Little bit," agreed. He was strapping himself into a harness near the airlock. "That's why it's going to work." How is ramming a maintenance shuttle into an alien warship going to work? Element of surprise. Nobody expects it. "Hey, is that thing recording?" He pointed at the shuttle's camera system. "The external camera. Yes, it's always recording for." "Good, want to get this on video." The scout ship grew larger in the viewport. It was an ugly thing, all spines and angles, like someone had built a ship out of bones. It was 10 times larger than their tiny shuttle. Its weapons charged, energy crackled along its hull. "Now Private," shouted. "Punch the thrusters to maximum." The shuttle rocketed forward, straight at the scout ship. At the last second, she hit the release. The explosives detached and flew toward the enemy ship. The explosion was beautiful. White and orange fire bloomed against the hull. The scout ship shuddered, then broke apart. Debris scattered in all directions. The shockwave hit the shuttle like a giant fist. Alarms screamed. Metal groaned, but the shuttle held together. Was laughing, actually laughing. He grabbed the radio and switched to the open channel. "Station Harmony, this is Commander Lee. Problem solved. You got any more of them alien bugs? That was fun." Back in the council chamber, Ambassador Park stood frozen. Her mouth hung open. The other delegates were equally stunned. The high speaker's glow slowly shifted from red to something new, something they had never felt before. Humans might call it respect, mixed with a healthy amount of fear. "Perhaps," the high speaker said quietly, "we underestimated the humans after all." Corporal looked up from feeding his pythons. "You definitely did," he said cheerfully. "Everybody does. It's kind of how the swarm sent their message 3 days after the scout ship was destroyed. Every screen on Station Harmony flickered. Every speaker crackled with static. Then a voice spoke. It was not a single voice. It was millions of voices speaking together like a chorus of nightmares. "We are the swarm, we are eternal, we are hunger. Surrender your world, surrender your flesh. Resistance is meaningless. You will be consumed." The message played on a loop for 6 hours before the council's technical teams managed to shut it off. By then, half the delegates had already fled to their home systems. Those who remained huddled in the council chamber, debating what to do. Commander Lee sat in the corner, writing a list on a napkin. His handwriting was terrible. Sergeant looked over his shoulder and tried to read it. "Hot sauce," she read aloud. "Fireworks, speakers, snakes. More snakes, sir. What exactly are you planning?" "Pest control," said simply. He finished his list and stood up. "Ambassador Park, I need to make some calls to Earth, and I need a ship to prime." Looked exhausted. She had not slept in 3 days. "Commander, the council is still debating evacuation protocols. We cannot simply." "Ma'am, no offense, but by the time this council stops debating, there won't be anyone left to evacuate. Bugs are coming. We need to be ready." He walked out of the chamber before she could argue. 2 weeks later, a human transport ship landed on Prime. The local watched in confusion as crate after crate was unloaded. The crates contained strange things: bottles filled with red liquid, metal tubes that smelled like sulfur, small boxes that hissed and rattled. Commander Lee's team set up camp in a valley near the projected swarm landing zone. They worked through the night, every night building things. The sent observers to watch. The observers returned looking disturbed. "They are digging tunnels," one observer reported to the planetary governor. "Hundreds of tunnels, and they have released Earth reptiles into the forests." Reptiles? Governor repeated. He was an old, his crystal body worn smooth by centuries. What purpose do reptiles serve against the swarm? The human called it psychological warfare. He said they have never seen a python before. Governor stared at the observer for a long moment. Then he sent a message to Ambassador Park, asking if Earth had made a terrible mistake. Ambassador Park sent back a single word, probably. On Earth, General watched the satellite feeds from Prime. He had a direct line to Commander Lee, but he rarely used it. Every time he called, the reports made him want to take more headache pills. "They're doing what with the hot sauce?" he asked his aide. "Loading it into the irrigation system, sir. Commander Lee says capsaicin disrupts pheromone communication." "Does it?" "Unknown, sir. No one has ever tried it before." General rubbed his temples. "And the fireworks?" "Sergeant has modified them into explosive devices. She calls them the Swamp Special." "Is that legal?" "Almost certainly not, sir." General sighed deeply. Then he approved Operation Sunshine State. He did not ask for details. He did not want to know. The ground forces arrived on a Tuesday. They came in massive drop pods, each one the size of a building. The pods crashed into the valley floor, throwing up clouds of dirt and debris. Doors opened. Warriors poured out. The defense forces opened fire immediately. Energy beams and plasma rounds slammed into the ranks. Some warriors fell. Most did not. Their armored shells absorbed punishment that would have destroyed vehicles. They kept coming. Then they reached Commander Lee's valley. The first sign something was wrong was the smell. The warriors stopped moving. Their antennae waved frantically, trying to make sense of the pheromone signals around them. But the signals were scrambled, confused. The entire valley smelled like burning peppers. "What is this?" the local hive commander thought. The thought spread through the swarm like ripples in water. What have they done? Then the music started. From hidden speakers buried throughout the valley, sound exploded into the air. It was human music. Specifically, it was something called death metal. The sound was aggressive, chaotic, completely alien. They had no ears, but they felt vibrations through their shells. The vibrations made them uncomfortable, angry, distracted. "Forward," the hive commander ordered. "Ignore the noise, find the enemy." The warriors advanced into the forest. The trees were different here. Something was moving in the branches, something that did not smell like or human. Corporal watched from a hidden bunker as the first python dropped onto a warrior. The massive snake, genetically modified to survive on alien worlds, wrapped around the warrior's head. It could not hurt the armored creature, but it could block its antenna. The warrior went blind. It stumbled, crashed into another warrior, and both fell into a tunnel entrance. The tunnel was full of explosives. The explosion echoed across the valley, then another, then another. Warriors disappeared into holes they could not see. They triggered traps they could not smell. They fought enemies they could not understand. The pythons were everywhere, dropping from trees, slithering through grass, climbing over bodies. They did no real damage, but they created chaos. And through it all, Commander Lee rode a modified straight into the enemy lines. He was screaming something about property taxes. No one understood why. It did not matter. What mattered was the absolute madness of a single human charging directly at creatures that had conquered 100 worlds. The hive commander tried to focus its warriors on this obvious threat, but its signals were scrambled. Its warriors were confused. Half of them had snakes on their heads. The other half were falling into exploding holes. Commander Lee reached the hive commander. He jumped off his bike, landed on the creature's back, and drove his machete directly into the joint between its head and body. The hive commander died with one final thought, which it transmitted to every connected mind. The humans are insane. The local swarm forces broke, not in retreat but in confusion. Without their commander, they could not coordinate. They attacked randomly, sometimes hitting each other. Sergeant's team picked them off from the tunnels, one by one. By sunset, the valley was quiet. Commander Lee sat on a rock, cleaning his machete. He had cuts and bruises everywhere. His cargo shorts were torn, but he was smiling. Private O approached carefully. She was recording everything for official reports. "Sir, you just charged a hive commander on a." "Sure did. That was extremely dangerous." "Yep. Why were you screaming about property taxes?" Paused, he thought about it for a moment. "Honestly, I forgot I wasn't in Florida anymore." Behind them, Corporal was collecting his pythons. They had all survived. He was feeding them treats and telling them they were good boys and girls. The observers watched with expressions that could only be described as trauma. Governor received the battle report that evening. They had sent 5,000 warriors. Fewer than 100 survived, and those were scattered and leaderless. Human casualties, 0. Casualties, 0. The governor read the report twice. Then he contacted the Galactic Council. "The humans," he said slowly, "are unlike anything we have ever seen. The swarm will return with more forces. We need more humans, as many as you can send." "Are you certain?" the High Speaker asked. "The reports suggest their methods are unconventional." Governor looked out his window. In the distance, he could see Commander Lee's team celebrating. They were doing something called a barbecue. The smell drifted across the entire city. "Unconventional," the governor agreed, "but effective. Send more." Deep in the void between stars that stirred, it was not a single creature. It was a collection of minds, billions of consciousness woven together into something ancient and vast. For 10,000 years, it had guided the swarm from world to world, consuming everything in its path. It had never failed. It had never retreated. It had never known anything but victory. Until now. They reviewed the memories of its fallen forces. It saw the chaos in the valley, the scrambled pheromones, the strange reptiles, the single shirtless mammal screaming about property taxes while stabbing a hive commander in the neck. They felt something new. It took several moments to identify the feeling. It was annoyance. These humans, the thought rippled through every connected mind in the swarm. They are not like other species. They do not fight with logic. They do not defend with strategy. They fight with chaos. The swarm had consumed species that used advanced technology. It had devoured civilizations with powerful psychic abilities. It had crushed empires that spanned entire galaxies. But chaos was different. Chaos was unpredictable. Chaos was annoying. "No matter," they decided. "We will simply use overwhelming force. Gather the fleet, all of it. We will crush this world and these humans together." Every ship in the sector turned toward Prime. 10,000 vessels of all sizes. Enough firepower to crack a planet in half. Enough warriors to cover the surface in a living carpet of claws and shells. This time, there would be no mistakes. On Prime, Commander Lee received the sensor reports with a low whistle. 10,000 ships was a lot of ships, even by Florida standards. "That's a big swarm," Sergeant observed. She was cleaning her equipment, carefully organizing explosives by size and blast radius. "Very big," agreed. "Going to need a bigger plan." Ambassador Park burst into their camp, her diplomatic calm completely shattered. "Commander, the Council is calling for immediate evacuation. We cannot possibly fight a fleet that size. We need to retreat and regroup and—" "Ma'am," interrupted gently, "running won't help. If we run, they chase. They're bugs. Bugs don't stop. Only way to stop them is to kill the thing that controls them." That's the one. Kill the boss. The workers get confused. Seen it happen with ant colonies back home." Ambassador Park stared at him. "You're comparing a 10,000-year-old hive mind to an ant colony." "Bugs are bugs, ma'am." Private O pulled up sensor data on her tablet. She had been studying patterns for weeks. The is located on the flagship, the largest ship in the fleet. It never leaves its ship. Too valuable. Smart bug said. Also predictable bug. We get to that ship, we win. The flagship is protected by the entire fleet, Ambassador Park protested. No weapon we have can get through that many ships. Smiled his most dangerous smile. Who said anything about weapons? The plan came together over the next 3 days. It was insane. It was impossible. It was absolutely something only a Florida man could think of. They had a decommissioned dreadnought in orbit. It was old, damaged, and scheduled for scrap. Commander Lee requested permission to use it. The who had stopped trying to understand humans granted permission without asking why. The team worked around the clock. Sergeant filled every empty space with explosives, not just regular explosives. The combined nuclear arsenal from 3 human colonies delivered by emergency transport, plus something she called her retirement fund. She refused to explain what that meant. Corporal, meanwhile, spent hours talking to the ship's computer. Ships used advanced artificial intelligence to manage their systems. This particular AI had not been spoken to kindly in centuries. It was depressed, lonely, and slightly glitchy. "You're a good ship," said softly, patting a wall panel. "Nobody appreciates you, but I do." The AI flickered. Its voice was rusty and sad. "You appreciate me." "Very much. Would you like a name? Real ships have names." "A name?" The AI's processors hummed with something like hope. "I would like that." Thought for a moment, then he smiled. "How about Gatorade?" The newly named Gatorade spent the next 12 hours bonding with Corporal. It showed him secret systems, hidden weapons, emergency protocols that had been forgotten for generations. By the time they were done, Gatorade would do anything asked. Commander Lee wrote one final item for the ship. It was a note on a piece of paper. He taped it to the main console. "From Florida with love." Sergeant read the note and snorted. "Poetic, sir." "Thanks, I tried." The fleet arrived at Prime exactly on schedule. 10,000 ships darkened the sky. Drop pods began their descent like rain. This time, there would be no valley tricks. The swarm would cover the entire planet. And then a single dreadnought launched from orbit. They noticed immediately. One ship against 10,000. It was laughable. It was insulting. But something about the ship's trajectory made the pause. The dreadnought was not heading toward the fleet. It was heading toward the flagship, directly, at maximum speed. "Destroy it," they commanded. 1,000 ships opened fire. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked toward the dreadnought. The ship's shields flickered, failed, collapsed. Its hull tore open. Atmosphere vented into space. Any normal ship would have been destroyed in seconds. But Gatorade was not a normal ship. Gatorade was very angry, very loyal, and absolutely determined to protect its new friend. The AI rerouted power from every non-essential system. Life support, gravity, lighting, everything went to engines and structural integrity. The ship accelerated even as it fell apart. Commander Lee broadcast on all frequencies. His voice echoed across the entire star system. "Hey BUGS, I bet you hit US. You're too scared. Your OVERMIND looks like a coward. Yeah, I'm talking to you, big bug. You're ugly and your antenna looks stupid." They had never been insulted before. It had consumed civilizations that begged for mercy. It had devoured species that it as a god. It had never, in 10,000 years, been called ugly. "All ships," the commanded, rage flooding through every connected mind. "Focus fire on that vessel. Destroy IT completely." This was a mistake. 10,000 ships turned their weapons toward a single target. 10,000 ships ignored their formations, their strategy, their centuries of perfect coordination. All because one shirtless human had hurt their feelings. The dreadnought shattered. its pieces scattered across space. But its core, the part holding all those explosives and that nuclear arsenal and Sargent's mysterious retirement fund, kept moving. Momentum carried it forward, straight and true, directly into the flagship's main hangar bay. Deep inside this chamber, the ancient consciousness had exactly 3 seconds to feel something new, something it had never felt before. Fear. Then the explosion happened. It was not just an explosion, it was every explosion. Nuclear fire mixed with exotic reactor meltdowns mixed with Sargent's mystery payload. The flagship did not simply explode, it evaporated, and it took every ship within 100 kilometers with it. The shockwave rolled outward like a wave in an ocean. Ships tumbled. Communications failed. The perfect coordination of the swarm shattered like glass. Because the was dead. For the first time in 10,000 years, the swarm had no leader, no guiding intelligence, no shared purpose. They were just bugs. Confused, scared, suddenly alone bugs. The remaining ships scattered in all directions, fleeing from the terrible light that had killed their god. The drop pods on Prime fell silent. The warriors stopped moving, then began to wander aimlessly, lost without the voice in their heads. On the surface, Governor watched the sky in disbelief. "They won," he whispered. "They actually won." Ambassador Park stood beside him, tears running down her crystal-dusted face. But the ship, Commander Lee. A radio crackled, static filled the channel, then a familiar voice broke through. "Hey, this is Commander Lee. We're floating in some debris out here. Anyone got a pickup scheduled?" Governor laughed. He laughed until his crystal body chimed with joy. "They're alive, how?" "Escape pod," explained casually. "Gatorade ejected us 3 seconds before impact. Good ship, great ship. Gonna miss that ship." In the background, Sergeant's voice was audible. "Sir, we're out of beer." "That's fine, mission's done. Let's go home." Ambassador Park wiped her eyes. She had never been so happy to hear a stupid complaint about beer in her entire life. The rescue shuttle found Commander Lee's escape pod drifting peacefully among the debris of what had once been the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. When the hatch opened, the rescue team found 4 humans playing cards on the floor. Commander Lee was winning. Sergeant was accusing him of cheating. Corporal was feeding treats to his pythons. Private O was taking notes for her official report. "Took you long enough," said cheerfully. "We've been out here for 6 hours. Ate all the emergency rations." "I was stress eating," defended himself. "The pythons needed to see me being calm." The rescue team did not know what to say. They had expected to find bodies, or possibly nothing at all. They had not expected a card game. News of the victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every species in Council space knew what had happened. The swarm, the terror of 1,000 worlds, had been broken by 4 humans and a friendly ship computer. The council chamber was packed when Commander Lee's team arrived for the official ceremony. Every remaining delegate wanted to see the heroes who had done the impossible. They filled the seats, the walkways, even the observation platforms above. Cameras from 100 different worlds recorded every moment. Ambassador Park stood at the front, holding a small box. Inside the box was the Star of Harmony, the highest honor the Galactic Council could give. In 3,000 years, it had only been awarded 17 times. Commander Lee walked to the platform. He was wearing cargo shorts. "Commander Lee," the High Speaker announced, their crystal body glowing bright gold with respect. "On behalf of the Galactic Council and the 8 billion lives of Prime, we present you with the Star of Harmony. Your courage, creativity, and determination have saved us all." Ambassador Park opened the box. Inside, the star sparkled like a tiny sun. She pinned it to his bare chest, right above his heart. "Thank you, ma'am," said. Then he turned to the crowd. "I'd like to say a few words." Ambassador Park felt a sudden chill run through her body. "Commander, perhaps you should." Good evening, everybody. My name's Lee. I'm from Florida. That's a place on Earth where we have a lot of alligators and hurricanes and interesting situations. I want to thank my team. Sergeant made all the bombs. Corporal kept the snakes happy. Private O did all the paperwork and kept us from dying. Good team. Great team. The delegates listened in confused silence. I also want to thank Gatorade. That was our ship. Very good ship. Gave its life for us. Somebody should build a statue or something. Anyway, the point is when bugs come to eat your planet, don't panic. Just think like a Floridian. Find the problem, hit the problem, keep hitting until the problem stops. Works for gators, works for space bugs, probably works for most things. He paused. The chamber was completely silent. Also, does anyone know where I can get more beer? We've been out since the explosion. Ambassador Park grabbed his arm and physically dragged him off the platform. The delegate, the one who looked like sentient moss, immediately began typing notes about this mysterious human drink called beer. If it could make warriors like this, perhaps it was worth studying. In the following days, the team received offers from every major power in the galaxy. They wanted to hire them as permanent military advisors. They offered them their own asteroid base. They wanted to clone Sergeant's explosives. One species offered to build Commander Lee a statue made of solid gold. Turned them all down. Thanks, he told the confused delegates, but I've got responsibilities back home. The swamps don't watch themselves. General called personally to offer a promotion. Admiral Lee, he said, you've earned it. Shook his head. Can't do it, sir. Admirals have to wear shirts. Also, too much paperwork. Besides, there's probably a gator situation happening in Sunny Palms right now. General sighed. At least take a vacation, Commander. You just saved a planet. Sir, going home is my vacation. The transport ship dropped the team off at the same Florida landing pad where they had started. The sun was setting. The air smelled like salt and swamp and home. Somewhere in the distance, a gator bellowed. Good to be back, said, stretching her arms. Aliens are fun, but nothing beats home. Agreed, added. His pythons were already perking up, sensing familiar smells. The snakes missed the humidity. Finished her final report and put away her tablet. I need a shower and a week of sleep and maybe therapy. You did good, Private told her. Kept your head while flying a bomb into a fleet. That's impressive. Smiled despite herself. Thank you, sir. It was certainly memorable. The team went their separate ways. Headed for her workshop, already planning new explosives for the next emergency. Took his pythons to the reptile sanctuary where he volunteered on weekends. Went home to her apartment and slept for 16 hours straight. Lee walked through the streets of his. People waved at him. Some had seen the news from space. Others just knew him from the gator incidents. He waved back at everyone. He stopped at the Sunny Palms retirement community. The elderly residents were sitting on the porch, enjoying the evening breeze. One of them handed him a glass of lemonade. Saw you on the news, old Mrs. Park said. You went to space. Yes, ma'am. Fight some aliens. Yes, ma'am. Win. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Park nodded approvingly. Good boy, now help me move this table, my back hurts. Life went on. 1 week later, a local news channel ran a breaking story. The headline appeared on screens across the country. Florida man, FIGHTS off bear with pool noodle. CLAIMS he practiced ONALINS. The video showed Commander Lee in a park, waving a bright blue pool noodle at a very confused black bear. The bear, clearly deciding this was not worth the trouble, turned around and wandered back into the woods. Just like a warrior, told the camera. Big and scary looking, but they don't like it when you stand your ground. The pool noodle is for showing you're not afraid. Psychological warfare. The reporter stared at him. You fought aliens with psychological warfare. And hot sauce and snakes. and a lot of explosives, works on everything. The video went viral across 3 galaxies. Meanwhile, in the great archives of the Galactic Council, a clerk was updating the official species database. Under the entry for humanity, they added a new notation. Humanity Terran species. Classification: mammalian bipeds. Earth Sol III. Council status: Allied full member. Military assessment: extremely dangerous, highly unpredictable. Tactics defy conventional analysis. Methods include chemical weapons, capsaicin, psychological warfare, reptiles, loud music, and direct personal combat, machetes, pool noodles. Special warning: if approached by a human from the region known as Florida, exercise extreme caution. These individuals display elevated levels of aggression, creativity, and complete disregard for personal safety. They are not representative of typical human behavior, but they are somehow always available during emergencies. Recommended response to conflict: negotiation preferred. If conflict is unavoidable, surrender may be advisable. Do not anger them. Do not insult their beverages. Do not threaten their reptiles. The clerk finished typing and saved the file. They stared at the screen for a long moment. Humans, they muttered, what a strange species. In the depths of space, the remnants of the swarm drifted without purpose. They were just insects. Hungry, confused, afraid. Some would eventually find new homes on empty worlds. Others would fade away, alone in the dark. But they would never forget. In whatever passed for their memories, one image remained burned forever. A shirtless mammal, screaming insults, riding a flying machine directly into their god's face. The universe had many predators, many conquerors, many empires that rose and fell across the endless stars. But there was only one Florida man. And that was probably enough.